As I said at the top, we are continuing our series on wisdom in Proverbs, and I'm going to start with one that gave me a laugh as I was studying for the message. So I read through the entire book of Proverbs, looking for ones that had something to do with rest. This one doesn't, but it just made me laugh. Bad, bad, says the buyer. But when he goes away, he boasts. Oh yeah, some of you know this one. Ever been selling something and had someone try to cut your price to an absolute, completely and utterly ridiculous level by pointing out the tiniest things that were wrong with it? Who's had that experience? Yeah? 3,000 years. For at least 3,000 years, people have been using this technique. Donna has a story she can tell you about after about it, but fortunately, she's gained wisdom in life enough that she didn't get taken in by this and did not sell something grossly undervalued from what it was worth. Proverbs offer wisdom that offer a reward if we follow them. Did you follow that? It's a formula. Proverbs offer wisdom that offer a reward if we follow them. To get the wisdom and the reward of this next proverb, we need to know what Proverbs means by a fool. In Proverbs, it has nothing to do with IQ. It has nothing to do with how intelligent a person is. It has everything to do with their behavior and their attitude. Here's a proverb of rest. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, people might actually think he's intelligent. Here's my version of that proverb. Engage brain before putting mouth in gear. That's what it's saying. And if you do so, and you're sitting there not saying something, people might actually go, wow, that guy's actually kind of smart. Now, I'll be the first to confess I'm not always good at this. How about you? Honest, I'm calling for honesty now. How many of you find this easy? You do it all the time. How many find this hard? Here's the thing about rest in Proverbs. It takes effort. To receive the rest that Proverbs offers takes rest. Last time, Ian told us about Proverbs' view of those that won't put in the work, that won't put in the effort. I just thought we might need a little bit of reinforcement in case we forgot that. So, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber and want like an armed man. There's lots of proverbs that are about this idea that if you're lazy or if you just don't do things that you should be doing, bad stuff happens. So there's lots of proverbs that say, put in the work, put in the effort. So let's consider some more of the proverbs that it tells us to work at, to put in some effort at about rest. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes or hers, but a wise man or woman listens to advice. The ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise. Whoever ignores instruction despises himself or herself, but he or she who listens to reproof, in other words, listens to people telling you where you're going astray, gains intelligence. Okay, so what are we supposed to rest from according to these proverbs? Shout it out if you got the answer. Okay, I'll help you. Self-reliance, thinking, I'm right. Which is a form of self-reliance, right? I'm right. Who do you think you are thinking you can tell me how to do something better? I'm right. What's the reward that is promised if you follow this wisdom for resting from thinking, I'm right. What's the reward that's promised? What's that? Oh, no, we've gone. No, we need to go back to, there we go. What's the reward that's promised if we listen to what this is saying about resting from thinking, I'm right? Well, the wisdom is, don't think you're right. What's the reward for following that? Others think you're right? That may be true, but it doesn't say that up there, does it? But others, that may well think you're true. It says the reward is you're actually being wise. That's part of it. And the other part, it says you gain intelligence. In other words, if you don't think you're right, you might actually listen to what other people are saying. You might actually consider it. You may even come to understand their point, and in doing so, you might end up a little bit smarter than you were before. That's what it's saying. But when I think I'm right, I'll give you an example. Some Lutherans are prone to this one. Well, I've gone through confirmation. I've learned everything I need to know about the faith. What happens if you take that attitude? You don't learn anything else. So I served as a pastor for, 35 years. I continue to study the Bible, and I'm continuing to learn. And I continue to come across passages that I go, I'm not sure I even agree with that, but I guess I better think about it. There's one person that in all honesty, and she knows the answers of this, there's one person I find it hardest to listen to the reproof from. Guess who? Yeah, you all know. It's our spouse, isn't it? That one that's closest to us. Find it hard to hear their reproof. They're still supposed to be on my side. Well, they are, but she is. I just takes a little. Like I said, I'm growing in this wisdom thing. I'm not saying I'm an expert at any of these. Here are three about the wisdom of resting from retaliation. So these are, all three are about resting from retaliating. Resting from when you feel upset, like resting from revenge, resting from somebody you feel wronged, I'm setting it right. 3 proverbs about that. A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. It's an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife, but every fool will be quarreling. Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. What's the reward for resting from retaliation? It actually it tells you of a number of different rewards that come from resting from retaliating. What's the last one? That's maybe the easiest to get. Peace in your house, right? Otherwise, you can be the richest person and have but if your house is full of people retaliating every time they feel wronged, this proverb is saying, you'd be better off living in a hut if the person you're living with, if the two of you are paying attention to this and are not constantly retaliating at each other. The one that I found most interesting here, actually, though, was the honor one, because the Hebraic culture is typical Eastern culture is honor-based. And so in an honor-based culture, typically when you get wronged, your honor has been besmirched, so what do? My honor's been wrong, so I have to show how wrong you were, and it becomes this. Did you catch what this is? This is really, really countercultural for the day, but I think it's countercultural for us in certain situations. You know the situation I found it countercultural in? And it's interesting to me how many times Ian refers back to the road and driving on the roads and how that challenges him. He's got good company or bad company here. I don't know which it is. It wasn't until I was doing this that I realized one of the reasons I get upset when somebody cuts me off or does other things on the road is I feel my honor I haven't been honored. I haven't been respected. And so my gut feel is I want to, and yes, the lady across the room can verify that that's true. But you know what this is saying? It says, actually, if you don't do that, you may actually gain honor. Interesting, hey? Think about that one. And you can probably relate to the truth of that if you've watched from the outside watching this going on and you watch the person that doesn't retaliate. You go, wow, that really took something for them to do that. Who is the greatest example in history of the picture of gaining honor by not responding with strife and retaliation? It's Jesus. Here are two from 3,000 years ago that seem pretty relevant for our contemporary consumer culture. The righteous has enough to satisfy his appetite, but the belly of the wicked suffers want. A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. In other words, we live in this culture of more, more, more. I've never got enough. I have to have more, more, more. I'm not happy because I don't have this. And Ian's made some reference to this in one of the others on Proverbs. I don't remember which one it was. But so this picture is to rest from the need for more. Is that easy? You know what? Some people actually find that easy. Some of us find it hard. And that's the way it is with all of these. Some we might find, oh, that's easy for me. And others, oh, that one's hard. What's the reward that is offered? By resting from the need to have more, of not being content with what you have. Peace, wholeness, and even better physical health. We actually know this is true from the study of people that go around always having to have more and never satisfied, and those that live with a life of contentment. Yeah. Turns out these Proverbs things are actually right. Who knew? Here's one that seems particularly relevant to the world we live in at this time. Who likes to watch the news a lot? Nobody's going to admit to that. If you watch the news a lot, this one becomes very difficult. Because on the news you hear a lot about all the evil that's happening all over the world. If you watch the news a lot, you're setting yourself up for, and I'm not saying don't watch the news a lot, I'm just saying you need to recognize if you watch the news a lot, you're setting yourself up for falling into this one. The wisdom that it offers here is, don't get worked up by the evil that you see going on in the world. Don't get worked up by people that you see doing evil. Is that easy to do? I think this is in some ways probably the hardest one. Like I said, to get the rest that it talks about in Proverbs takes effort. But what's the reward that this one promises? It says you're going to see their end. You'll see their end. And there's many that talk about this, that the idea of the wisdom that what the evil do, what the unrighteous do, you'll see their end. But the way of the righteous, the way of the wise will endure forever. Now, if you're like me, hearing all of these, you can get to the point you go, man, I wish I could get better at living with the wisdom that Pastor Craig's talked about, that Proverbs talks about, that Ian's talked about. How do you get there? Well, there are some things that are real clear. The first step is you have to accept that it really is wisdom. Sometimes that's the biggest challenge, because it may confront something that from your life and from, particularly if you've gone through some life experiences where you learned a pattern of survival that was directly opposite to one of the Proverbs, that you've learned a pattern that it's worked for you to help you get through life, and then now this proverb is challenging that. So, for example, people that have been belittled and abused can arrive at a point in time they start surviving by retaliating. And that, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm just saying there's a point in time, if you want to live with the wisdom this is talking about, you're going to have to go against what you've learned through your life experience. Something that worked well for you, but is now not wise for you. So you got to start by accepting it really is wisdom, and that the reward it offers is real and it is worth it, and that not accepting it is foolish. That's the key. And that not accepting it is foolish. I don't want to be a fool. Then there are various techniques that we can use to help us get feedback at how we're doing on something we set ourselves on. You can journal, you can find a supportive friend you can talk to, you can get a counselor sometimes, that's necessary. Certainly talk to God about it. God has a way, if you ask for help, of getting you the help you need in these things. And then, third thing that I know, you got to recognize that people are different, that you're different from other people, and don't get frustrated if you see someone that if this is just easy for. Or don't get self-righteous if you go, well, this is easy for me, because there'll be another one that isn't easy for you. You got to accept that we're all different. We have different things that are going to be easy for us or hard for us. And here's the absolute most important thing I can tell you. The most important thing I can tell you to be able to receive the wisdom of rest that Proverbs talks about. And it comes from something St. Augustine said 1,600 years ago, and many of you know this, and you can probably even say it with me. You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. 1,600 years ago, Augustine understood us as human beings and understood what God does for us and said this: you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. You see, all this stuff that we've been talking about, all the restlessness that we have in us, the root of it really is this: not fully resting in God. God's solution for this, well, it's the whole Bible and the whole history of salvation, but ultimately it comes to giving us new hearts, hearts that can rest in Him, by giving us hearts that can rest in the wisdom of His love, His goodness, His truth, and be made new through the new hearts that we can receive through Jesus, the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world and shows us all the goodness of God. It says, rest in what I'm telling you about God. And look what He did to back up what He's saying. If you don't believe me, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to die on the cross, I'm going to rise from the dead, so you can know that every word I'm speaking is true, so that you can rest in it. You can rest from all your restlessness, resting in the goodness and love of my Father. He gives us the Bible that we can know this. And in the Bible, one of the things we also get stories of the saints of old and the saints of new that we can look at and go, oh, okay, I can see, wow, that didn't work so well for that person. Oh, I've been doing that. Oh, wow, look what happened there. Little story from the Old Testament, then before Jesus had come, of 3 men faithful to Yahweh, faithful to the Lord, to the God of Israel, and an example of what they accomplished by the way that they rested in God. They knew God from God's history of working with the nation of Israel, and they were in captivity in Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar, classic, with everything that you could possibly have, is restless. And so what does he do? He builds a golden statue that's 90 feet high and 10 feet wide and says, everybody has to worship this thing. Well, there's some restless citizens in the country that are jealous of the influence that 3 of these foreigners have in Nebuchadnezzar's government. And so they call them out to him and say, they don't respect you. They're not paying attention to you. They won't do what you ask. They're not worshiping the statue or the gods that you've told them to worship. And he becomes furious. Now, that's an example of restlessness. He becomes furious. And he calls them out. And he says, you do this, you bow down to this statue, or I'm going to throw you into a blazing furnace. And their response, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, if our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery service, and he will deliver us out of your hand. We know God can do that. But look at what they'll go on to say. But if not, in other words, even if he doesn't deliver us from the burning furnace that you're prepared for us, be it known, O king, we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. That is an example of resting in faith in God. And it's an example of great faith, and their great faith results in some amazing things happening. Furious, the king gets the furnace 7 times hotter than normal and throws them in. And then he looks in, and he sees the 3 of them walking around, and a 4th one, Scripture says, like a son of God, walking around with them. So he shuts down the furnace and calls them out, and they're not even scorched. And he proclaims that everybody of all nations need to worship their God. So at least he had the wisdom to learn from that experience. I proclaim to you today that you have the gift of knowing that 4th man who walked around in the furnace. Jesus, risen from the dead, transcends space and time. And he walks with you today. And you can rest in him. Everything that's making you restless, you can rest in him. And the goodness and love and kindness, power, as one of the kids said in the children's talk, that he has shown and demonstrated is God being for you, not against you. God loving the world, not hating it. God wanting to bring life, not death. So you're going to have an opportunity now to bring all the things that you're feeling restless about to God, and you can join in the song, or you might just take the quiet reflection time just to say to God, God, help me with this. God, help me with this restlessness that I have in my heart.